Woman Who Chat is sponsored by Grow Radio. Grow Radio is an online radio station dedicated to bringing you a different podcast on the hour, every hour. I'm proud that Woman Who Chat is played on Grow Radio every Tuesday at 3 p.m. and Friday at 8 a.m. and to be a part of their podcasting community. If you want to listen to the station, explore their shows, check out many of the blogs to improve your podcasting skills, or get your podcast onto Grow Radio, head over to growradio.uk today. Welcome to Woman Who Chat, and today I'm chatting to Kara Owen of Kara Mia Venue Styling. Hello.
Hi, how are you doing, Sandra?
Great, it's lovely to have you on here today and to find out a little bit more about your business. We're also going to talk a little bit about challenges, both personal and business, because I always say business is a roller coaster, but things that happen outside our control as well can have an impact on our business. So tell us what you do, Kara.
So I style venues mainly for weddings, and generally when I say that, people look at me and think, what do you mean? So I do chair styling, sashes, things like that, centerpieces, big archways. I do everything in silk florals. Silk florals. So some things that a florist may do, like centerpieces and arches, we have that in faux.
Oh, right, okay. And sort of, you say you do weddings, so that's a big industry at the moment. It's growing massively. I mean, how far in advance do people book these events and your services?
So I've had some people book 3 years in advance. And then I was actually speaking to some of the industry friends the other day, and we were saying how strange it is since the pandemic that all of a sudden people are booking 3 months in advance, and it's really short lead time. And I wonder if that's because people panic that before businesses went out of business during the pandemic, or just that perhaps for my sort of niche, that they think they'll do it themselves and then realize actually they don't have time or they don't really want to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right there. I think because people were paying deposits so far in advance and then we were all cut off.
Yeah.
And I've got an events background as well. That time was horrendous, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. But you didn't wake up one day as Kara Mia Venue Styling. I know that you started your business 4 years ago, and we'll talk about that because that's a challenge in itself when you started. But what did you do? What did you want to be when you grew up, and what did you do when you left school? What's your backstory?
I wanted to be a ballerina. Unfortunately, I don't really have the build for it, and I'm not actually very good. So, when I left school, I went to do my A levels, decided they weren't really for me, and I ended up working in a pawnbroker's. From there, I trained up. I've got a professional jeweller's diploma, and I worked in Birmingham's jewellery quarter for a long time, selling wedding rings and engagement rings. So I've sort of always been around weddings, but not really worked in them. Once I had my children, I had 2 under 2 on my own, and it wasn't really feasible to be travelling to and from Birmingham from Coventry. And at that point, I became self-employed, working in boxing events.
That's a complete contrast.
But I do say an event's an event. So I'd rather deal with a bride than 30 boxers, because one bride is much easier.
I was going to say, obviously you weren't decorating boxing rings. You were putting on and organising the events, were you?
Yeah. So, and boxing on them sometimes as well. So that was
complete contrast. So you started your business 4 years ago. You started your business in March 2020.
Yes.
If we look back to March 2020, I know that was probably the week or 2 weeks before the pandemic and complete lockdown. Take us through that period of time, why you started, why, this business, and the sort of how you got into sort of launching this business, but what happened in the early days.
So with the boxing, obviously, I wasn't styling the events, but we did tablecloths and things like that. And so I had this store of tablecloths. And then I thought, well, what else could I do? And like I say, I've always been around events and weddings. My auntie used to have a wedding dress shop. So I was there from about the age of 4, and I loved all the pretty things. And I just thought, you know what, why not? I'll try and do some events. But it wasn't weddings. I was nowhere near confident enough. I definitely steered towards parties, and that's what I wanted to do. I suppose in a lot of ways, I was quite naive, and maybe the pandemic was a good thing for me because it actually gave me time to do smaller events and build up a bit of confidence and then think, actually, I'm quite good at this. I'm actually quite creative. And as we went forward, I'll still style parties, but what I really love is to do weddings. I love to get to know the couple, you spend a bit more time with them, and you feel like you take a burden off them almost by taking this big chunk of the day where they don't have to do anything. They just tell you their ideas and you'll do everything for them. It gives me a lot of satisfaction to be able to help people that way.
And, if I look back to March 2020 and, I'd got events and they were all cancelled. And then I got events in the May, they were cancelled. I had a big event. We pushed it back to September because hotels said they were going to be open. And then they were told they couldn't be. I remember refunding £10,000 worth of tickets. Very challenging time for me. So it must have been a period of time before you could actually start doing events. And then they were capped at 30. So I
Yeah.
suppose that was a good transition into for you in those smaller events at that time. But it must have been challenging to suddenly decide you were starting this business and almost not be frustrated in a way that you couldn't actually deliver what you wanted to deliver.
Yeah, it was a challenge for sure. Like you say, it was quite good for me having weddings of just 30 people because for a long time I was on my own in the business. So I could easily set up for 30. And we had the opportunity to go to some lovely venues, albeit in masks. But yeah, I think if you're going to learn about resilience in business, that was probably the best time to open.
I remember my first event back, and I think that was, the following year. And I think they'd said that you could hold weddings as long as there was social distancing. So I wasn't holding a wedding, but the venue I was working with said, well, look, we can make it a wedding if we need to. And it was great because I did have a wedding registrar in the guests and I had males and females. And at the start of the event, when I opened it, we had to wear masks to go in, but we were allowed to take them off when we got there. And I had 50 people in the room. And the first opening was, well, if we get inspected or anybody comes here, we've got a registrar, we've got a man and a woman, you're the bride and groom. We sort of, because that's how it was very gradual in that time, how
Yeah.
they let people back into the room. And even the following year, there was still challenges, wasn't there? So how have you found that? Have you found it just, it's assisted you, that transition and that slow opening up? Or did you find it frustrating?
I mean, I did find it frustrating, but I do think it helped me. And I think I look back now and it's almost as if it didn't happen. You look back now at the social distancing and things like that, and it's so alien now that we're able to all get back together. I do think once we were allowed to get back together, parties and weddings went off in a big way. And we were so pleased to be able to actually have our family and friends back together that we really did celebrate that and enjoy it. I think this year is the first year that we've got back to normal with weddings because obviously everyone else had a backlog that they had to then service. I was lucky I didn't have a backlog because I wasn't taking bookings pre-pandemic. So I do think in that way it did help me quite a lot.
And I think it's your frame of mind as well. If you go into something and you think, well, I'm starting at the worst possible time, the only way is up.
Yeah, 100%.
Further down, it's because being in events and not being able to do events, the only way is up from there. So I suppose that's been a benefit in a way that you hadn't got a year behind you, and then suddenly it all plummeted. You actually, got started right at the beginning.
Yeah, it was really helpful. I mean, like you say, we had events booked in for boxing, and that was really difficult because we had boxers saying, well, shall I train or not? And you're like, well, if the gyms aren't open and the venues aren't open, carry on training at home if you can, but we can't put on a show. You can't social distance when you're punching somebody.
Yeah.
So,
I know it's very difficult with sports. I was working with a sports, club, and their players couldn't play for a period of time, and they were having to train at home. Well, you just can't do that, or go
not
running.
really.
Can't do that. Not with team sports, anyway.
No.
But anyway, let's get off the pandemic because I know that your business has grown. You're obviously doing weddings now. You've still got obviously young children, so
Yeah.
you're juggling that. And you'd said before we came on, you said that your husband had really been recently been diagnosed with quite a rare disease. How's that impacted? Because obviously our personal lives can impact on business, and has that presented any challenges around the business at all?
Yeah, it's been really difficult. I mean, so Robbie has got a mitochondrial disease called MELAS. On his birthday in 2022 September, we thought he was having he was having strange vision. So I said to him, "You need to go to hospital. You know what men are like; they won't go." And I said, "Look, if your vision is really this bad, we've been to the opticians. You need to go to the hospital." And he had what we thought was a stroke. It ended up being this mitochondrial disease that affects all the cells in your body. So he was in hospital initially for a week and then had a seizure and had to go back in. So at that point, obviously, I don't know, it's quite calm, strangely enough, because you think, I've just got to get through this. So I had the children that I was juggling and then going backwards and forwards to the hospital. Now, what I find is Robbie hasn't been able to drive since. His vision's much better, so we're hoping that will come soon. And he's not worked since. So I'm a bit of a chauffeur a lot of the time to all these different appointments. Somehow we make it work around the weddings. I don't know how, but the juggle is real, because obviously there's nothing more important to me on a wedding day than that bride and that groom, because it's as simple as that. I would never let anyone down. But on the other hand, there's no one more important to me than my husband. So I have to make sure that I've always got plans in place just in case.
Mhm.
And the good thing is now I have got I've taken on an apprentice that I'm training up, and I've got ladies that have worked with me before that I know if I need to call them up and say, I need help, I need you to come, that they can do an event and it doesn't necessarily need me there for the full duration, although I like to be there.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing how we just cope? We just make things happen, and that's forward planning on your part. You've got your apprentice, you've got your network that can help make your business work when
Yeah.
you need it. But it's building in that support network, it's building in those plans, it's just making sure that you've got every base covered in a way. And because obviously, as you say, you've got that dilemma. My business, the bride comes first, my husband comes first,
Yeah.
and you've got to make them both feel special.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And I think there is always a positive in every negative. And the positive that has come from this is it has taught me you can't do everything on your own. Stop trying to be everything, because that doesn't work. And actually put some systems in place and write down what you do so other people know. So if you do have to hand it over, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's such a valuable lesson, put systems in place. I was taught very early in my legal career to make everything bus proof, i.e., if you walked out the door and you got knocked over by a bus, could somebody pick up your files and run with them and carry on doing the job you were doing? And it really made me think that early on, and think, well, actually now is what I do bus proof. I've got plans in place. I've just taken on a VA, and I'm now transitioning into educating her in what I do. My son helps run my events, has done from day one. He's just good at that, and he's very organized and meticulous. But I know that if I couldn't get to my event for any reason, it would still happen,
Yeah.
still take place, because I've got those things in place. Yes, I'd be gutted, I'd missed it, but sometimes you never know what's around the corner. And with me breaking so many bones, I always seem to get there with my broken bones, but sometimes I need help, and it's sometimes really difficult to ask for help.
Yeah, it's one of the things I was absolutely terrible at. I'd always think I can do everything myself. I don't need help. Very independent, very stubborn. And you can still be independent and stubborn and accept help off people. If people want to help you, let them.
Yeah.
Let them take some burden. Why not have a rest if you can?
So obviously you've got, your personal challenges at home, and I really hope that he improves and that he's able to get back to doing what he did before. But the burden on you is financial then as well. So you are the breadwinner for the family. So does that
Yeah.
put extra pressure on you?
It has, but I see it more as motivation than pressure, because this business has no option of failing, because I can't fail my children and I can't fail the family. and I'm unemployable now.
I love that. We're all unemployable.
Yeah, once you work for yourself, I don't think you're employable anymore because I work to my own routine. I work when my creativity is flowing, that's when I do the creative stuff. When I feel able to do the business side, that's when I do it. I'm not in a box having to, okay, you've got to come at 9, you've got to do this then. Although events can be very regimented in timelines, the rest of the time I can do what I want. And I do. And I enjoy that. And I like being able to say, oh, well, today I'm going to go and meet somebody and network with them. I'm going for a coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, it's business. It's not, it's time out of my business for me. I enjoy it, but I have the opportunity to do that. Whereas when I was obviously working full time, barely got a lunch break, let alone being able to do anything else. So,
And
yeah.
I probably if you've been working full time, your husband's illness would have presented an even bigger challenge to you because of the flexibility you now need to work around that. I mean, I suppose that most of your events you're setting up before the event takes place. You're not actually, you're making sure everything's perfect when the bride and groom walk in
Yeah.
advance. Then I suppose you have to go and clear it all down and clear up the debris afterwards. What's been the most unusual sort of requests that you've had? Something a bit quirky that some brides asked for? Has there been anything?
I think the most unusual actually was our own wedding. So we got married last September, and what I was trying to work into it is we met boxing, and boxing and weddings don't go together. So it was trying to work a way out so we could get that weaved into the story and it not be tacky, for want of a better word. So, and also my husband served in the Navy, is really proud of that. So he wanted that to be a part of the day.
Yeah.
So we had, I think 2 weeks before the wedding, I had this flash of inspiration and made a flower box sign that said it started with a kiss and then crossed out the kiss and put punch. And everyone knew that was us because the first thing my husband ever said to me was, how many fingers am I holding up? Because I've been punched in the face.
I love it. So, and is that the thing, the key then to what you do, is finding a story that weaves in the likes and passions from both the bride and groom, or what the...
I think so. I think if it's important to you to have a wedding that is not the same as everybody else's, then the only thing that is different about the wedding is you and who you're marrying. So make it personal. And people love that personal. Your guests might not know everything that you two know. So it's lovely to put little things in that they then can find out. I know in our ceremony we had a celebrant and Robbie had told them all about our first date, which nobody knew about, and now everybody knows about, and everyone thought it was hilarious. So that is when you're surrounded by the people that love you, it's nice to open up a bit and show them a bit more of yourself, I think.
Yeah, and I'm all about visibility, and I think sharing little stories and things like that really helps grow a business anyway. So if people just find out there's little threads and can identify with them, it just makes it even more special, doesn't it?
I think so, definitely.
Yeah. Sadly, we're coming to an end, but before you go, and I always asked all my guests, if there was a top tip or piece of advice you would want to share with my audience, what would that be?
So this is one that I'm only just getting started on, despite the fact that my husband has been on at me for a long time. And that's going to be do a CRM. So you know what customers you've contacted when, what you need to do for them. And again, it's all about that making it, as you said, bus proof. If I'm not in and someone needs to know where an event is at, they can log in and see exactly what's been done. So they're not duplicating work. So yes.
That's a brilliant tip, because so often we've got it all in our head, or it's on our laptop, which has got
Yeah.
probably got a password on it, but if it's got shared folders or something that somebody else can have access to. And I imagine, with an apprentice, you're training up, you're delegating, and with the people you work with, you're delegating certain tasks, and that's really important. And all those things, all the likes and dislikes of your clients can all be recorded on that CRM.
Exactly. And then they know exactly what we're working towards. It's really important.
Well, Kara, it's been great chatting to you. That's Kara Owen from Kara Mia Venue Styling. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.